Mordecai Kaplan, I first became aware of because some of his lectures that were given around the city were advertised in the local Jewish paper. I also should mention my grandfather, who was a world-known, renowned scholar and publisher of books, all in Hebrew, J.D. Eisenstein, Judah David, my father's father. And he was the one who would tell me from time to time about this heretical gentleman by the name of Mordecai Kaplan, who did something, outlandish, like he asked his daughter to become bat mitzvah. This was a very shocking thing. So he got to be known. I liked the idea myself, not knowing at the time that I would marry this first bat mitzvah, ultimately. He encouraged any kind of question, and doubt was not a dirty word. He was willing to approach the Torah as a human document and, reflecting the time in which it was put together. And that's just a sample of the openness that attracted me. Actually, the first class I attended was a landmark moment in my life because I resonated so agreeably with everything he had to say. So from the very beginning, I became a disciple. He didn't know that at the beginning, but he soon discovered it when I began writing papers for his class. In my first year at the seminary, I began to go down to the SAJ to hear him preach. He was a formidable person. He was big and strong, and he had a big, booming voice. And when he spoke, you had the feeling that this was coming off Sinai. As I got to the end of the third year, Kaplan approached me and said that he would like me to become executive director of the SAJ during my senior year. As far as my relationship to the SAJ, that's how I moved in, kind of on a permanent basis. Kaplan had started the SAJ, and in 22, and he, I guess, woke up one day and realized that he had 4 daughters and he'd never have a bar mitzvah. So he called Judith in the night before and said, I want you to read a portion of the Parsha tomorrow with the brachot. And the next morning, they called her up for a sort of special aliyah. It wasn't one of the regular 7. And she made the bracha from before the reading, and then she read that portion, and then she read the bracha afterwards, and then she sat down. And the story got into the Yiddish papers. Scandal, This new synagogue they started by this fancy name, by this man who has these fancy ideas, actually got a woman, a female, to go up on the bima. Well, then there was a lot of talk. We didn't take action at the SAJ on calling women up to the Torah until, I think, the late 50s. But I think it's important to note that we still didn't call women up to the Torah. It took like 12 or 13 years after that things moved very slowly. I think it was in '58 that we finally voted that women should be given aliyot. Our next major effort was the Shabbat prayer book. We made some pretty basic changes there. And in the introduction to the very first edition, they're spelled out. Actually, it was Milton who wrote it out for us, and we worked on it together. On the chosen people, revelation, resurrection, personal Messiah, Musaf, and we changed the text either by modifying it or eliminating it. And that was the book that led to the explosion by the Orthodox rabbis, the Agudas Rabbanim. In 1945, they met at the Hotel McAlpin in New York, and they burned the book. And they put Kaplan in cherem. They excommunicated him. The three of us, Eugene, Milton, and I, were insulted because they only excommunicated the Kaplan. The four of us did the same thing, but they didn't think it was worthwhile excommunicating us. I had the feeling that Reconstructionist thought, or Kaplanism, or Kaplanian philosophy, would simply gather dust on the bookshelves, no matter how many books we wrote. And he wrote Judaism and Civilization, Judaism and Transition, Meaning of God, Modern Jewish Religion, etc., etc. And even I joined in with the Creative Judaism, what we mean by religion, Judaism under freedom, etc., etc. And we wrote books and we wrote pamphlets, and I knew that it wouldn't make any difference, because the American Jewish public, God bless them, didn't go by what they read in books. And so I was fighting for making Reconstructionism a movement, a real movement. But in the meantime, I had been able to save the foundation and establish the college, which, as far as I'm concerned, was the most important thing I ever did. I mean, the Haggadah, and the Shabbat prayer book, and the holiday prayer book, it's all very well. I wrote some books, okay. But establishing a rabbinical college was something.